Hey, so my plan is to make Tuesday Tips Tuesday. I'm going to try and post a video every Tuesday with some tips, whether it be editing on Premiere Pro, Lightroom, Photoshop, or flying a drone, or photography, whichever. I'll mix it up, and I'm hoping to post regularly every Tuesday with a short video just going over some tips. Now I'm sat in the office, I haven't got the webcam on so you can't see me. I'm just going to share screen, record this and go through some bits on Lightroom that I use a lot that maybe people aren't aware of and can hopefully help speed up your workflow. So one of the things I find people don't know about, don't use at all, is the match total exposure setting. So what you can do is it's different to the sync settings. If I've got these three images now, I've got my edit on them, my highlights and shadows and everything are all set. If I was to sync settings, they would change all of the settings to exactly the same. That's not what I want to do because the light might have changed, but as they were walking and I was taking shots, so the light is slightly different between the three images. So what I want to do is I want to make sure the exposure across the frame is the same in all the images. So when they were printed, when they're presented side by side, they would all look perfectly exposed, or all have the same exposure as each other. So what I can do for that is set one image how I want it, highlight the other ones, come up to settings, and then there's match total exposures, or the shortcut Control-Alt-Shift-M. I never remember the shortcut, so I always do it from the menu. So yeah, match total exposures. If I click that, what that will do is, and if you look at the histogram between all three of the images is now pretty similar. It's all spread out entirely across the frame. All that setting has done is changed my exposure value, so it hasn't changed any of the other settings that I already had. It's just made it so that the exposure of this frame matches the exposure of these ones. So that's my first tip. On to the second one. My second tip is around the clipping indicators for both highlights and shadows. So the red means that your highlights are blown. If you were printing on an inkjet printer, it wouldn't put any ink on the paper. It's less of a worry if you're processing things C-type prints, which are still going to expose something, but you're not going to have any detail in there. Now I wouldn't be worried about this image because the clipping is only on the sky and there's no detail there anyway. You see, if I turn the clipping off, there's no detail to lose. So I wouldn't be worried, but if it was on their shirts, I would be, and I'd want to change it. The other thing this shows is the shadow clipping. If I pull the blacks all the way down, you'll see it'll start going blue. That's where it's become pure black, and there's not going to be any detail in those blacks. You want to make sure that there's no blue on the blacks, and there's no red on the whites, or anywhere that there's detail that you want to preserve when it's printed. Next tip is around cropping overlays. So if I'm cropping an image, you come up with a normal, the normal rule of thirds crop. If you press the O key, it cycles between different crops that will help you with whether you've got leading lines. And then you can shift and O rotates them. So if you've got leading lines in your image, this can help you frame those. You've also got the golden spiral, and again, shift O rotates that. And one of my favourite ones is this one, which shows you the different crops for prints. So you've got the standard 2x3 or 4x6, how it comes out of your camera. You've then got a 5x7 and a 4x5. And if you're providing images for print, this allows you to do it so that it's framed, so that whichever ratio your clients were to choose, you can make sure that it's framed properly for those. And my final quick tip is around using the filters, whether it be a graduated filter, and I've already got one set up here. When you're using a filter, so this is an exposure filter, pulled down from the top, I've got show selected mask overlay, so that's all on there, and you can see what it's impacting. In fact, I've already brushed some of it off, so what I'll do is I'll delete that. I'll add a new one, pull it down from the top. So you can see it's affecting everything there. If I just wanted to use this to pull down the highlights in the sky, what I can do is I can pull it down to where I want it. So I've got it minus 1.13 stops, but I don't want it to reduce the exposure on the guys or on any of the foreground. So what I can do is, rather than brush it off, which can be time consuming, I'm going to come to the range mask. and I'm going to turn it on to luminance, and I'm going to pull the range up, and then you can see it fades off all of the darker colours and onto the light ones, so that's just going to be affecting the sky now. You can do it the other way. If I wanted to just reduce the exposure of the dark bits, obviously you would pull that down, so you could do that and lighten bits up. But this luminance built-in luminance masking, it's really handy, and it's you could be more accurate in Photoshop, but this is a lot quicker. So there you go, that's a few tips I wanted to go through on Lightroom. I'll add some more next week, either more on Lightroom or on Photoshop.